mean, when was the first time you saw Jeff play?
Well, I went to my first game in December '67, and it was Southampton, and it rained very, very heavily indeed, and it was 0-0. And Jeff played that day. Obviously, he didn't score, but I remember I got home, and the collar had come out of my jeans and gone into my pants. I was so wet. But I was completely enthralled by the whole experience. And he was absolutely the hero up there. If anyone had a badge with someone on it, it was Jeff Astle.
Because he had that reputation, didn't he, as being the header of a ball, and he could head it like no one else.
I'm not sure that heading the ball is quite the art that it used to be. You get people, if I was to say to you, who were the best headers of the ball in the Premiership, I think you'd struggle a bit. It used to be a very, very specialist skill, and he was amazing at it and got incredible power into it. I remember he scored a goal in the 1970 League Cup final, and Joe Mercer on the commentary said, and Astle soared up like a mighty seagull, because he had a white shirt on and he wasn't frightened of getting his elbows out a bit. So it is a specialist skill which has somewhat died out, but yeah, he was amazing at it.
Because there's that famous picture of him, isn't there, where he's heading it and it looks like the ball has surrendered and he's going into it because he's hitting it so hard.
It is. It's Jeff used to talk about that picture and get very annoyed if people said to him, "Oh, you know that picture where you burst the ball?" And he'd say, "No, I didn't burst the ball. They've got it exactly on every header I did that to the ball. That was the kind of power I got behind it." Yeah, but it's a fantastic photograph. He told me that Don Howe, when he took over at West Brom, said, "Jeff, I think you're heading the ball too much. I think we need to play more stuff on the ground, because it's making our play a bit one-dimensional." And Jeff said, "You know what? If you don't want me to head the ball, then I think you might have to sell me," which I think he did, in fact.
Because that was West Brom's game, wasn't it? To have the wide players, and they would practice that according to.
Well, we had some great wide players. I mean, Clive Clark was a fantastic winger, and we had blokes who could get those crosses in. But of course, if you've got someone like Aston in the middle, yeah, you wanted blokes who could do that. And he epitomised strength and self-belief and all that. When he went up for that ball, in a cluster of players, you just knew he was going to get up there first. He was like a colossus in the goal area. It was really something special to watch.
And when did you first get to meet him?
I didn't meet him until we were doing fantasy football, which was a programme that we did in the mid-90s, me and David Baddiel. And we used to do recreations of famous moments from football in a feature called Phoenix from the Flames. And we recreated a notorious offside goal that had been scored against Leeds United, which Jeff scored. I think Tony Brown was initially offside, and then I think Jeff was probably offside as well to compound the sin. And there was like a riot and all that. It was extremely entertaining. So we went to his house, and we did these things a lot. We were always meeting old famous footballers. But that journey to his house, I remember just feeling nervous, because I thought, God, what if I meet Jeff Astle and he's not a very nice bloke and he says something that upsets me? And it would be like retrospectively, I would look back at every raised arm moment that I shared with him. That moment when I watched him, the '68 Cup final, I watched the home on the telly. I remember getting on my knees and kissing him on the screen after he scored and feeling all the static on my face. I didn't even know that televisions did that. All that will be slightly spoilt by meeting this bloke. As it turned out, he was fantastic and really friendly and really funny and really wanted to join in and do it. And, some of those players that we worked with, they were footballers, they weren't actors. They really struggled with the lines and delivering gags, as they have every right to. You know, if me and David Baddiel had been put into a football team, we would have struggled. But Jeff was such a natural. He got all the timing right, the comedy timing. And the moment that we always talk about is when we said, so of course Gary Sprake was in goal, we'll pretend Gary Sprake. And he says, no, my wife will be Gary Sprake. And he called Lorraine out the house and she had to join in as well. But he was fantastic. I was so thrilled, and he gave me a signed photograph of himself and all that. And I remember on their wall in the living room, they'd got the goal from the '68 final, a massive thing. It was just, I felt when I came out of there, I really felt, oh man, I could have just cried, because I'd met Jeff Astle and he was exactly what I wanted him to be, more than I could have hoped, because he was a real. In the way on the pitch, Jeff Astle was a dominant force. I mean, he was like a life force. In company, he was like that. He was always doing gags and stuff. He used to come to fantasy football and he'd tell me a story, and at the end of it, I'd be black and blue, because he used to punctuate, hey Frank, with these elbows in the ribs, and he was such a big bear of a man. He didn't realise the strength of him. I remember him saying to me once, he said, you know, Frank, you know me, Frank, I like to have a laugh and a joke wherever I go. And I thought, you know what, that is exactly who you are. So that showed a certain amount of self-awareness.
And then you realised, obviously, that he was really funny. And at the end, you used him at the end of the programme every week.
Well, what happened was, we came away from there and thought that was a great experience. He's probably the best footballer we've ever had for doing the comedy stuff. But we didn't think, let's get him on, because we didn't have that regular thing. But we filmed with a couple of players who were in the '70 World Cup squad. And they knew I was a West Brom fan. And they'd always say to me, God, Jeff Astle, he drove us balmy in that World Cup. He used to have a little record player, and he'd be always always trying to get a sing song going. He said he was always messing about, you know, practical jokes and all that. And it became apparent that he was the kind of comedian, you know, in that world. And I knew that on the album that they'd done, that he'd taken most of the lead vocals, you know, on Back Home, but they'd done an whole album of covers and stuff. Incredible to think now. But Jeff got most of the lead vocals. I think he was the only one who could really sing in the squad. And I had a single by Jeff called Sweet Water, which, you know, he'd actually commercially released a single, nothing to do with the England World Cup, just by Jeff Astle. So we knew he could sing. And so we asked him to come and close the show every week with a different song. And then it got that he dressed up as something every week. But, you know, it was almost the same experience on there. He still liked the crowd. He loved that big cheer when he came on. And he loved being at the centre of it, you know, which is what he'd been like as a player.
It must have been sad, because it was when he did that the last time that I think the family knew that something was wrong.
Well, the first series or so Jeff did, he was just great. Just give him the song and he'd do the song. And then there was a few incidents which I look back at with some guilt now, because we laughed about, you know, he wouldn't. I remember we did like We Are Sailing, and he said, I don't know where you get these obscure songs from, you know, I've never heard of this song and stuff like that. And he couldn't remember the national anthem. And I said, look, Jeff, I know for a fact you've heard it at least 5 times, because you've got 5 caps for England. And I just thought it was, you know, the way people are. But looking back, of course, that was the beginning. But one thing I thought was interesting is that one of the medical people that Lorraine, his wife, spoke to, said actually doing fantasy football probably staved it off for quite a while, because it's a good thing to be having to learn lines and learn stuff just kept it going. Once you relax and stuff, and then it takes over. I went to an away game with Jeff. We needed to get a result at Portsmouth to stay up. So I went down, I met Jeff at his hotel there, and we went to the game. And he says, come back to the hotel for a game of pool. And I said, quite a way away, isn't it? And he said, oh, don't worry, we'll get a lift. I said, really? He said, yeah, watch this. So we stood at the side of the road. We waited till a car came with Albion Scott collars on. He stepped into the road like this and said, can you drive me to... And they all going, hey, Astle. He said, can you drive me to my hotel? And we got in, and they were going all the way there. They were singing, Astle's in our van, Astle's in our van. And he was loving it. And it was like celebrity hitchhiking. He just knew he could stop any Albion car. He could have said, drive me to Moscow, and they would have done it. And we got back to the hotel and we were playing pool, just me and him in this room playing pool. I remember he was taking this shot and he was thinking about it, and as he was lining it up, he was singing to himself, Astle's in a van, Astle's in a van. Brilliant. He loved it, he really loved it. They loved him and he loved them.